All right, let's get this country started. We all know England came, they saw, they conquered, and the New World was born. People were happy, but that was soon to change.
They wanted no more mothering hand. They knew the time had come for them to take command. It's very clear you're being unfair, King. No matter what you say, we won't obey. Gonna hold a revolution now, King, and we're gonna run it all away with no more King.
We're gonna elect a president.
No more King.
He's gonna do what the people want.
No more King.
We're gonna run things our way.
No more King.
Nobody's gonna tell us what to do.
Yep, no more kings. It's easy to sit around and talk big when the big guy isn't around. Our forefathers did exactly that. They sat and they complained. Then they wrote it all down and called it the Declaration of Independence. Led by Thomas Jefferson, they sent this declaration over to the king.
Ooh, there's gonna be fireworks on the 4th of July. Red, white, and blue fireworks like diamonds in the sky. We're gonna shoot the entire works on fireworks that really show, oh yeah, we declared our liberty 200 years ago. In 1776, there were fireworks too. The original colonists, you know their tempers blew. Like Thomas Paine once wrote, it's only common sense that if a government won't give you your basic rights, you better get another government. And though some people tried to fight it, well, a committee was formed to write it. Benjamin Franklin, Philip Livingston, John Adams, Roger Sherman, Thomas Jefferson, they got it done. The Declaration, the Declaration of Independence in 1776. The Continental Congress said that we were free. Said we had the right of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Ooh, when England heard the news, they blew their stack. But the colonists lit the fuse, there'd be no turning back. They'd had enough of injustice now, but even if it really hurts, oh yeah, if you don't give us our freedom now, you're gonna see some fireworks. And on the 4th of July they signed it, and 56 names underlined it. And now to honor those first 13 states, we turn the sky into a birthday cake. They got it done. The Declaration, the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Continental Congress said that we were free. Said we had the right of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness.
We hold these truths to be self-evident,
that all men are created equal,
that they are endowed by their Creator
with certain unalienable rights,
that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And if there's one thing that makes me happy, then you know that it's there's gonna be fireworks.
That July 4th, 1776 date, pretty important in our country's history. King George received this Declaration of Independence, looked it over, laughed at it, and sent over the troops. A lot of people think this was our country's first attempt at forming a government. Really, it wasn't. Declaration of Independence, 32 paragraphs long. 27 of those 32 were just complaints to the king. We don't like you. We don't like this. We don't like that. You're not fair. Kind of sounds like some of you guys at home. But this Declaration of Independence did do three very important things. First, it said that all people possess natural rights. Not just natural rights, but God-given natural rights. Considering that one of the reasons our country was founded was religious freedoms, pretty hard to argue with God, and we still discuss this one today. Second, it said that our government's main job was to protect the rights of the people. Now, this will also be debated today. Whose rights are protected? Whose rights aren't protected? For heaven's sake, it took us for a long time just to figure out who we considered a person. And last but not least, it said that if people do not believe that the government is acting on their behalf, that they can abolish the government. Pretty heavy stuff considering we were about to get into a revolutionary war with them. It was clear that we needed to get a start on some form of government. So our forefathers got together once again, and they drew up what was called the Articles of Confederation. But that brought us straight back to the question of, who rules? It was decided that we'd have a central government, but a weak one at that. It had to answer to the states. That's 13 different groups calling the shots. Does that sound good to you? This weak government, the weak central government, caused a big problem. Our central government had no power to tax, no power to collect money, no power to do much without permission from the 13 states. It could do very little to help our country. It also made us look weak to world powers. They began to wonder, could America be had? Could we go over and take over? Well, as you know, we eventually got away from that. And everyone jumps on board today. Any government class you'll take in high school or in college, it'll show off all the weaknesses, as you see here. It was clear to our forefathers something needed to be done. And that something began at the Constitutional Convention. Enter the United States Constitution. The first thing our forefathers decided was we would have no king here in the United States of America. So let's not even consider an executive branch. They began debate on the legislative branch. The first man to step forward, with the backing of James Madison, was Edmund Randolph. He was from the state of Virginia. His plan, the Virginia Plan, favored the larger states. It only made common sense. The more people living in your state, the more say you should have in government and the laws that were made. But hey, what about us, thought the smaller states? If the large states get to decide everything, we'll never get a say in government. That's not fair. That's what we were trying to get away from in England. So up stepped William Patterson from the state of New Jersey. His plan, the New Jersey Plan, called for equal representation for all states. Every state should receive the same number of votes. Kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. But again, we were concerned with fairness. How would it be fair for a state with only 100,000 people to be equal to a state with 500,000 people? We needed to find something that would work. That something would be called the Great Compromise. It took a look at both plans and had to find one way to keep everybody happy. The main points were that we would have a bicameral legislation. That means we have two houses, like we have today. The House of Representatives would be based on population. The more people living in your state, the more representation you'd have in the House. The other side of the lawmaking branch would be the Senate. Every state would have equal representation there. That kept both the large states and the smaller states somewhat happy. But the biggest, most important part of the Great Compromise was the fact that we agreed that we needed a strong central government. Not one with just the powers to tax, collect money, and build roads, but one with 3 branches to keep the power divided so that, again, no one person or one branch could get too strong. Although this Great Compromise seemed to settle the issue of representation, there were still several members, specifically down south that with large plantations, that did not feel they were getting a fair shake. With their population so spread out with their land, they wanted their slaves to count to give them more representation. The matter went up before courts, and they came up with the 3/5 compromise, which meant that for every 5 slaves, 3 would count in the population to give them representation in Congress. After the battle at Yorktown, the war came to an end. The treaty was signed in Paris, and America was ready to stand on its own. It was time for us to be truly independent. It was then, in September of 1787, James Madison, the father of our Constitution, was able to finally go forward and put the plan in place. All that was left was to get the 13 now states to ratify the Constitution. In order to make the Constitution the law of the land, we need 9. The first domino to fall was Delaware, ratifying the Constitution almost immediately. Shortly thereafter, other states fell, and finally, when the 9th state, New Hampshire, ratified the Constitution, it became the law of the land. We were now the United States of America. In 1788, it would go into full effect. The new president, George Washington. Our country was now ready for takeoff. And the rest, as they say, is history.